Factoring trinomials by grouping. Example number 1. First, identify your a, b, and c values. If this is a trinomial of the form ax squared plus bx plus c, you can identify your a, b, and c values. A equals 8, b equals 10, and c equals 3. You will then multiply together your a and your c value. So 8 times 3 is 24. This will be your product number. If you've ever worked with product sum puzzles, that is the number at the top. Your sum number will be your b value. So we're going to be looking for two numbers that give you the product of 24 and a sum of 10. First, start with numbers that will give you a product of 24. So list the factors of 24. 1 times 24, 2 times 12, 3 times 8, and 4 times 6. We're going to be listing all positive because we're working with all positives in our work. Now determine if these add to give you a sum of 10. 1 plus 24 does not add to give you 10. That adds to give 25. 1 plus 12 does not add to give you 10. It adds to give 14. 3 plus 8 is 11. You cannot come close. You need the exact value. So 4 plus 6, that one works. So our two factors that we're going to choose are 4 and 6 because they give you the product of 24 and the sum of 10. You will then use those values to rewrite the bx term using 4 and 6, and don't forget to use the variable x with those numbers. So we can rewrite the trinomial as 8x squared plus 4x plus 6x plus 3. Notice we take the 10x and separate it as the two terms, 4x and 6x, which still gives you a sum of 10, but we're using those numbers because it works for our product and sum. Now factor by grouping. Group the first two terms and the last two terms of the polynomial. The first group, 8x squared and 4x, always look for the variable first, so it has a common variable of an x. The smallest exponent will determine if it has a variable, so an exponent of 1. You have 8x and 4 left. Now let's factor out a common number. Start with prime numbers, so 2 will go into both. Continue to divide by prime until you can no longer divide by prime. So a 2 will go into 4x and 2. So this will be the GCF, x times 2, which is 4x, is the GCF of the first group. Let's do the GCF of 6x and 3. Again, look for the variable first. We have 1 in this first term and none in this second term. Therefore, they do not have a variable in common. They do have a number. You can divide by 3. So our GCF is this number out in front of 3. And notice your leftovers at the bottom of the prime factorization will match. So let's write our answer in factored form. We have 4x as the GCF of the first group times our leftovers, which is 2x. Use the same sign that you had in the step above, so plus 1. The second group has a GCF of a 3, and our leftovers, 2x. Again, use the sign from the step above. You will need to write your final answers as 2 sets of parentheses. Some people think about this as factoring out the common factor of 2x plus 1. That will be 1 set of parentheses. The other set of parentheses will be your leftovers, this 4x plus 3. So the 4x plus 3 come together and make a parentheses, and the 2x plus 1 is 1 parentheses. That is your final answer. You could also write this answer as 4x plus 3, 2x plus 1. It does not matter the order of those parentheses. Multiplication is commutative, so you can multiply in either order. Let's look at example 2. Again, start by naming your A, B, and C. A is 3, B is negative 11, and C is 6. Multiply together your A and your C value. So 3 times 6 is 18. So we're going to be looking for a product of 18. Your sum number will be your B value. So we want to get a sum of negative 11. Start first with the product of 18. Factors that give you a positive 18 could be positive times positive. But look and notice we need a negative sum. Positive times a positive will not help us get a negative sum. So let's do negative times negative. So negative 1 times negative 18, negative 2 times negative 9, and negative 3 times negative 6. Find the sum of these numbers now that will give you a negative 11. Negative 1 plus negative 18 gives you negative 19, so that will not work. Negative 2 plus negative 9 is negative 11. That's the one we need. It would not be necessary to go further and check anymore because you found the one you want. Negative 2 and negative 9 give you a product of a positive 18 and a sum of a negative 11. Use those numbers to break apart the middle term, negative 11x. Remember to include variables on those terms. So negative 2x minus 9x plus 6. We took the factors that we found, negative 2 and negative 9, and broke apart negative 11x, including our variables on those terms. Now factor by grouping. Notice that the second group has a negative as the first term. You should have learned in the factor by grouping lesson that if the first term of a group is negative, you must factor that out. Let's do that first. Factoring out a negative from that second group will make all these signs become opposite of the original problem. So this is going to become a positive 9x. Opposite of negative is positive. And this becomes a negative 6. Opposite of positive is negative. We factored out a negative, so it makes your signs become opposite of the original problem, just in that second group. Now let's factor the groups. A 3x squared and a 2x, look for a variable first. They have an x in common. Look at the smallest exponent that has a x of the first power, so that's what we can factor out. Now look at the number. A 3 and a 2 does not have any common factors, so we are done. Let's factor the second group. Look at your variable first. We have an x to the first and x to the 0 if you want to think about it. So we have no common variables for this group. We can now factor out a number. A 3 can divide both into a 9 and 6. 3x and 2 have no common factors, and again notice it's the same leftovers as we had in the previous group. Let's write our answer in factored form. Our GCF of the first group is x, and then our leftovers. Our 3x, go back and get the sign from the step above, so minus 2. Our GCF of the second group is 3, but don't forget your negative that you've already factored out. Our leftovers, 3x, and again, our step above has a minus 2. Because we correctly factored out our negative, our sign and our leftovers of the second group is also going to be correct because our parentheses match. We need to write our answers as 2 sets of parentheses. Some people take the GCFs together and make a parentheses, and then your leftovers as one. Or you can think about the 3x minus 2 being a greatest common factor and factoring it out first and then leaving your leftovers. However you want to think about it that makes better sense to you, both answers are the same.